Sunday night, the season will end with the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. High stakes for both teams. If the Dolphins lose, there'll be a wild card going on the road. If they win, they'll be the number 2 seed. If the Bills win, they'll be the number 2 seed. If they lose, they could miss the playoffs altogether if both the Jaguars beat the Titans and the Steelers beat the Ravens, which are both expected to happen if the betting line means anything. So, big scenarios here for both teams. The idea, Peter, that the Buffalo Bills could go from the number 2 seed all the way to out of the playoffs is amazing. That's the kind of drama you want to have woven into Week 18. Now, we'll know the stakes by the time the game starts, but if these Jaguars and Steelers games go the way that we think they should, the stakes for the Bills will be number 2 versus out, and for the Dolphins, we know it's number 2 versus number 6. Huge difference heading into the playoffs, which begin the following week.
You know, the amazing thing to me, Mike, is that, I'm sure everybody at NBC rejoiced when it was Buffalo at Miami as game 272. I would have rejoiced too. It was the only decision to make. And look, once it became apparent that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to play the JV team in Baltimore on Saturday, we're going to have our upset picks later in the show. I'm picking Tennessee to win that game outright. And, for a lot of reasons, 2 of them being Mike Vrabel and Derrick Henry. But be that as it may, it would be an incredible slap in the face, both to the NFL and to NBC, if the outcome is determined before the game is played and all of a sudden the Buffalo Bills are playing for pride at 8:50, 8:20 on Sunday night.
But they're still playing for the 2 seed versus wild card. Even if the Jaguars or the Steelers lose, there's still stakes here between number 2 seed and winning the division and going on the road in the playoffs. The one way that this becomes the most high wire possibility for the Bills is if both the Jaguars and the Steelers win. That is what NBC presumably will be rooting for, because that increases the drama for the Bills. But either way, it's 2 versus 6 or 2 versus 6 or 7, depending upon which team wins. We had that epic game, 2019, I think the last game of the regular season, 1 seed versus 5 seed between the Seahawks and the 49ers.
Yep.
Went down to the wire. Huge difference. Now, there's no buy-in play here, but up to 2 home games in the playoffs versus probably 0 games in the playoffs. The only way the 6 seed is going to host a game in the playoffs is if the 7 seed goes on a tear, and it's 6 versus 7 for the conference championship. So either way, nothing is going to be set. The only thing that makes this better is if both the Steelers and Jaguars win, and the Bills are looking at number 2 or go home.
Yeah, I think my point about the Jags-Titans game was that this is, to me, a real game. You would think going into the game that it was a competitive walkover for the Jags because Tennessee doesn't have anything to play for. Did you see the video clip of Mike Vrabel this week talking about how it is bad to lose? I guess I can say it sucks to lose.
Yeah, oh yes.
But
yes, different word that ends with UCK that
because
he said.
Other words have been said. Yes. But the point is that game all of a sudden is interesting. And I guess, smart money for not having anything to do with the line on the game. Smart money would say that most people would think Jacksonville's going to win. And I don't know what most people would think of the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game, but I'll take Pittsburgh playing for something over Baltimore just wanting to get out healthy. I think that the Steelers, who beat them early in the year anyway, it's always a competitive game no matter what what's on the line. I just think Baltimore is going to have trouble winning that game. But I think it comes down to, I mean, can you imagine Buffalo sitting in their hotel early on Sunday? That is an early game. Is that a 1 o'clock game? Or is that a 4:25 game, the Tennessee-Jacksonville game? Whatever.
Tennessee-Jacksonville, 1 o'clock
Imagine them monitoring. Yeah, 1 o'clock. They're going to be watching that game. And imagine them going to the stadium with the two outcomes that they dread. I don't know, Mike. It'd be pretty interesting. I'll ask you this question. How would Buffalo react to the worst possible situation?
I mean, look, in their mind, I would assume, and a lot of it's cliche-driven, in their mind, they're going there to be the number 2 seed, and that's all we can control. And we'll know ahead of time whether it's 2 versus we're not making the playoffs at all, or 2 versus the safety net of being the 6th seed or the 7th seed. That's not a great outcome anyway. It's better than not making the playoffs, but we want the 2 seed. We're going there to win, and we want to come out of there with the 2 seed. And for the Bills to even have that possibility of being the number 2 seed in their grasp, when we look at all the crap they've gone through this year, and I talked yesterday about the timing of bottoming out. Some teams are bottoming out too late to really turn it around, like maybe the Eagles. The Chiefs are starting to turn it around after they bottomed out on Christmas Day against the Raiders. The Bills bottomed out really with that Monday night game against the Broncos, and they fired Ken Dorsey the next day. And then when the 20,000-word negative item about Sean McDermott came out, Rasul Douglas told me on Sunday after his 2-pick performance against the Patriots that Sean McDermott addressed the team after that article came out, and that's the moment it turned. Like, who would have dreamed that they'd turn it around after that low point and be in position to get the number 2 seed? It almost feels inevitable that given where they've come from, given what they've done, and given that the Dolphins were just embarrassed in Baltimore, it feels inevitable that the Bills are going to win that game. Now, of course, that probably means the Dolphins will win it, but I don't think they're residing in that notion of worst-case scenario. I think they know the brass ring is right there, and all they got to do is grab it.
And look, Mike, I think in some ways that it'd be better for the Bills because then they would play as total desperados. Maybe they would anyway. But wouldn't they play as total desperados to say now, okay, we're not in the playoffs. We have to win to be in the playoffs. So in some ways, those two outcomes, Jacksonville winning, Pittsburgh winning, in some ways would be almost an ideal world for the motivational side of this game. And, the one other thing I would look at with this game, Mike, is that, honestly, the way it's been set up, I think, by the NFL in terms of the scheduling is pretty cool because you have one shoe to drop on Saturday night. You have another shoe to drop Sunday at 1 o'clock, and then you have the third shoe to drop on Sunday night. So, the AFC playoff picture is being stretched out and dramatized over about a 32-hour period instead of everything being decided in 6.5 hours on Sunday afternoon. So I think in that way, it's kind of a fun thing. And look, Mike, you and I may agree on this anyway, that the Buffalo Bills are 8-1 in their last 9 games against Miami. Miami is a little bit wounded right now, obviously. If they play this game on, November 7th instead of January 7th, it's probably an entirely different prospect because the two biggest threats to rush the passer, Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, are gone. And, Vic Fangio is going to have to find some way to scheme up and to make, and people laugh at this, but, Andrew Van Ginkel better be the defensive player of the week this week in the AFC because there is a lot of pressure on him to be incredibly disruptive in this game with the loss of Chubb, obviously with the loss of Chubb and Jalen Phillips. So I think that is a huge factor in the game. And I think Buffalo has a pretty big advantage as to when this game ultimately was scheduled.
By the way, even though it goes back a minute or two, when you say Desperado, I can't pass on the opportunity to point out I almost slipped into a trance like Brett, the Carl Farbman aficionado from Seinfeld, who would stop anytime that song came on the radio, to the dismay of his short-time girlfriend, Elaine. Everybody's girlfriend or boyfriend was short-time on Seinfeld, except for Susan, who died from licking the poison envelopes. Now, as to Bradley Chubb, I want to know your take on this. I want to know your take on this. Chubb was in the game when it was 49-19, and he suffered that torn ACL. I mean, is it? I think that this is one of the reasons why the 49ers and the Ravens are saying, whoa, let's protect our guys. We've just seen what can happen. I mean, look, you still have to have guys on the field. You have to play out the game. Is it fair to criticize the Dolphins, to criticize Coach Mike McDaniel for having Chubb in the game down 30 points with just garbage time, and then there goes the ACL, and you've lost one of your best pass rushers, your only best remaining pass rusher for the balance of the season?
I think it's fair. But on the other hand, when exactly do you take them out? And how many do you take out? And you can't take everyone out. You don't have enough players to take all of your starters out. And again, I totally understand that Bradley Chubb is one of your 5 to 8 most important players. Not most important defensive players, most important players, particularly after the loss of Jalen Phillips. So, Mike, you could hear it in Mike McDaniel's voice after the game. You could read the transcript of his quotes. He was second-guessing himself for having Chubb in the game. And, I don't think it's worth it to, totally rake him over the coals. But in my opinion, Mike McDaniel, coming into this offseason, is going to write on this what I've learned checklist board that he'll have. If the game is out of reach with 7 or 8 minutes to go, you have to empty the bench. And I'm sure this morning, if you asked him about it, you gave him sodium pentothal, he would say, I regret it. I'll be really, hey, Mike, you know what? I'll be interested to see what happens. And, I guess it would be out already, right? What was said on Hard Knocks this week? Because clearly that'd be a matter for him to address on Hard Knocks. But Mike McDaniel's a smart guy. I think he's going to learn from this. It's obviously an incredibly bitter lesson, but there's nothing they can do about now except try to find some way to beat Buffalo on Sunday.
I caught up on Hard Knocks earlier this week while I was working, and there wasn't anything that made me say, oh, wow, oh, that's significant. There wasn't anything new there. It may have just been something from
you
the
saw
press
this
conference
week's
after the game. I can't remember, but it didn't. Yeah, because Tuesday night's episode, they do a good job of turning it around quickly, so they had all that in there. And they had Bradley Chubb getting injured. I just can't remember how far they went down that rabbit hole of maybe Mike McDaniel shouldn't have done this. I don't remember that there was any quiet moment where McDaniel and Vic Fangio or anyone else were huddling saying, boy, that was really stupid that we did that. I just don't remember that. If it happened, I was focused on writing another article about, playing Christmas games on Wednesday or something like that, and I wasn't paying close attention to what was on Hard Knocks at the time. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.